she and Eva should have a talk to get their story straight.
Well, we were
That's the
different.
whole point.
That's
So going to Eva, I remember discussing this in the past. Going to Eva, you went back and forth like 3
Yeah.
times, not just twice. Yeah.
We'll never know what the
well,
true
I
story
sort of
is.
didn't I just see Eva pass by? Yeah, here's Eva.
It was here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So here we're back.
Should we unmute Eva? Eva, you're unmuted.
That's the
I'm
interesting
unmuted.
part.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
The interesting part is that
Okay.
I was little, Eva was a little older, and we saw the world so different.
Differently, very differently. Our impressions are, I'll tell you what, let me say this. We went twice over the Alps, right? We went once we experienced the war in France with the tanks and the Nazis.
Yeah.
And we went then to Switzerland.
We did?
That's where we went over the Alps and went to Montreux.
Ah,
The
I
second
didn't know that.
The second
I heard
time we
that.
went from Chamonix to the Alps.
I see, it clicks.
We came back because Papi believed that we weren't in Vichy. We were in Chamonix.
Yeah.
But Vichy was a regime that decided that France was free and there was a free France. That free France, we didn't know, the Jews didn't know, made a deal with the Nazis that they would deliver the Jews.
Yeah.
That's history. You can read in a history book. That's history.
But
no Jew knew that.
Yeah.
So, and we went believing that this was free France. And we went back to Chamonix. But we stayed close to the border. And that was the second time. And the most thing that I still have nightmares of is when we went over the Alps that you described where there was snow, and there was snow.
Yeah.
We had friends, we made some friends, Jewish friends in Chamonix. And there was a couple that came every Shabbos afternoon to our house in Chamonix to have coffee, in the afternoon, coffee and cake. And I remember them, today I remember them vividly. When we came up the mountain,
yeah.
When we came up to the mountain, up in the Alps the second time, there the two of them were lying on the floor. You did not notice that?
No.
To me, I still wake up at night from it. They were holding each other lying there.
They were.
You've definitely heard this, Boma.
And we passed them. They were frozen.
Yeah, we heard this story.
I've heard this story.
They had fallen or something. No,
No, that's
I didn't know
story.
they
Must
knew
have
this.
fallen.
Sorry,
I wasn't there. Only now I saw them lying there. These were the people who had coffee with us Shabbos afternoon. And we just passed them.
Huh.
And that was in the snow.
Friends. I knew the story that they were bodies.
That is totally not in my history.
Not part of it. And you didn't even notice it. You were little, you didn't notice it, right?
Yeah, I'm sure Papi hid it from you also.
Yeah.
Well, naturally.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I want to add is when we came the second time, we went to Engelberg.
Yeah.
We were in Engelberg. And from there, after we went to, we were in Zurich and then we had to go to Engelberg.
Right.
We came first to Opa to Zurich. We couldn't stay and went to Engelberg.
Right.
And when we were, that's what Papi always talked about. That was in the ERG that they didn't give him an aliyah. When he went, where Opa davened all his life.
That was in the. I was told it was in.
I think it might be two different things. I thought in the ERG he didn't get an aliyah because he was an Ostjuda.
Yeah. And that he was just, and he didn't have the money, nothing. And he was an Ostjude, right? And he wanted an aliyah, he had just come. It was a miracle, no?
Yeah.
And that's when he decided he wouldn't, you know,
It was
he wouldn't ever daven in a German shul.
oh my God.
And that's how he actually, you know, when he came here, all he wanted was a stiebel. He just had it. I remember that.
Yes.
That was the rabbi in the ERG.
Rabbi Weiss.
Who wouldn't give him an aliyah.
I
And
got-
also they treated, I mean, the truth is, and that's something one has to know, you know, people behave the way the rest of the world behaves. People were, the Swiss Jews were very afraid of the immigrants. They were going to bring all kinds of problems because they were outsiders.
They were
And
around there, and these people were showing up.
what?
The Jews were safe in Zurich, and then they had these immigrants showing up.
Right. And they were going to discriminate against them. And that happens, I think that's part of people.
Yeah.
You know, that's just part of how people think. They think in their time. And that was the time. The time was discrimination.
In New York, we were the greenest, and I think in the beginning, my in-laws weren't that happy that Moshe decided to marry me.
Possibly, also right. I mean, I'm sure there was certain
In fact, I
right.
have a letter that says that.
Oh, yeah?
I found it after Moshe died. It's people. People are people.
I mean, no matter what, you're still part of your time. You live whatever there is, you know, at the time. Your attitude is formed by it.
Okay, so we're going to move on now
Yeah.
from, you just crossed the Alps.
And we were going down, and Papi wanted
Where are we? Which Alps did we? The first or the second? The second?
Second. I only
Yeah, the second.
Walking over the Alps.
Well, the second was like this, right? And then we went down, and he was the guide. I mean, did it for money, obviously. If you didn't have money, that's another thing. If you did not have money during this war, there was no way you could save yourself. There's just something that also stuck with me and which is really true. The only way you could save yourself was if you could bribe. You know, you paid people. If you didn't have it, they would throw you to the sidewalk. There was no way you got out of there if you didn't have money. And we all had money. You had money. Do you remember that? The little satchel? I still have the satchel.
I have one, and I gave one to Ellie. It's a little bag.
Hand sewn, little satchel that hung over you. And Mutti made it, and she gave, I had one, you had one, and I guess whatever she had, wherever she had.
And what was the purpose of
So that if we would get lost, we could offer money to be saved. And if you didn't have money, there was just no way that you'd be saved.
So you got over the mountains and you made it to safety, relatively.
And Papi went.
We got over the mountains to a certain spot. And then the guy said, now we are finished. That's how far I go. And he sent us down a meadow. And I still remember that very vividly. Down, he said, if you go long enough, you will find a train station. It's not a station, just the train.
And then you walk.
And we ran down that meadow. It was a meadow, green meadow.
Yeah,
Because if they see you, the French, we were still in French territory. He left us in French territory, not in Swiss territory. If they catch you, then they kill you. They shoot you.
And
so we ran down.
Guns.
You remember that?
I remember the person with the guns and the
And
big
Papi
red,
took a K. Do you remember that stick he picked up? Picked up a stick, and we went, and when we came down, there were lots of people standing waiting, other people standing waiting for that train, and he kept hitting, and he got us into this train almost first. He just hit people.
He hit people with the stick.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't hit them, you know, but I mean, people had to make room for us. I
don't
remember this.
What I do remember was him going.
And we got on that train, and once we were on the train, that was okay. We were safe, right?
All right, so
But there were people who didn't make that matter and weren't safe. I mean, you know, if you didn't hit it, didn't make it, and if the train left, the train didn't wait for everybody to go on either.
no.
I mean, it wasn't, you know.
So now let me just tell you I don't remember the train at all, but what I do remember was that my father left us halfway up the mountain. We were going down into the valley and said to Eva, take care of her, meaning me, because I was so dirty and yucky, and my sister went like this and started cleaning me up with her spit because there was nothing else. And I still feel it on my face. And then my hair was always very curly and messy, and she tried to sort of civilize me. And she always took care of me, that I must say. She had this burden on her hands because my mother had said to her at one point, you're in charge of your sister. And then from there we went to Zurich, and in Zurich we weren't allowed to stay, so we went up to Engelberg, which is a little town, and where we met my mother. And basically it took quite a few years for us to stop being afraid to walk and to do and to be. And that's it. What questions do you have?
How long did you stay in Engelberg?
In Engelberg, about 3 years.
And then from there?
We went back to Zurich and stayed with my grandfather till 1948, when I remember my parents sitting in the kitchen and my father saying we're going to Israel and my mother saying we're going to New York. And they were always talk to each other very loud and happy. And my mother obviously won. We got to New York. Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In Engelberg, when we were there, we went to a school. Do you remember the school? Did you go to that school or you didn't go to school? I went to school.
Sister Teresa.
And it was a cloister.
It was
and we had nuns who were teaching us. It was a cloister in Engelberg. That's the school that there was.
Yeah.
That's where we went.
But they were very nice. I didn't have to pray.
Very, as a matter of fact, extremely nice. I still have the pictures I made there. And it was the first time that I really started to relax. They were very, what I remember was that it was just so soft and sweet, everybody. Well, maybe they also wanted to convince me that, you know, whatever, I don't know. But the point was that I actually thrived there after all that. And I still have at home. I have the you know, some of the homework we made and the pictures I made.
My sister was an excellent student, which I was not. I enjoyed
and it always annoyed you when I made it.
And that was what I was going to say.
It took me too long. Polly was always very, very fast. She still is. It takes me 3 times as long to do something as
but
that's
she gets an A. But she gets an A at the end.
All right, but you are finished in no time, and there it is. and it's very nice.
Okay, I think Micha had a question.
Yeah, what month will you cross the Alps?
What month did you cross the Alps?
What
August.
months?
August.
What month was what?
We crossed the Alps in August.
Yeah.
And there was snow up on the top?
No,
Well,
the Alps. Do you know what the Alps are like?
We
Yeah,
were there in
Micha has
August
been
and
there,
there
that's
was lots of snow.
No, Micha can't imagine because he's been there. It's freezing up there. He can't imagine little girls doing that walk. It's like,
Right. I agree with you. And many
That's
people
what he
did
wanted
the
to
walk
hear.
and obviously didn't make it.
The couple that this very same guy guided a week after us, they
Right.
and the guide fell into a ravine, and that was the end
Right.
of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was
He
the
was
end of
gone.
this man and this couple.
Right.
And I felt very guilty because I played with this couple's daughter who was my age.
Oh.
She bit me.
Oh, yeah.
She had a toy and I wanted it, and she bit me right over here. And
Oh my God.
oh yeah.
do you know how far you walked? Micha wants to know. Do you have any estimate of how far?
Walk, like
Not the train. How far you had to walk under those
4
conditions?
or 5 days, 12 hours a day. I have no clue. We tried it a couple of years ago. I decided to do this whole trip with my family and show them by car, naturally, which is slightly different. And we did it like in a couple of hours with.
No, but we didn't go over the border.
Yeah.
We just went up the mountain and looked towards the direction that you walked in. That's not,
What was the estimated distance, like in kilometers?
we don't know. Well, we could look it up on a map. Look from
Yeah, I
Chamonix
mean,
to
there's
the border.
The mountains are still there, the same mountains. They didn't move.
Gilad took the map out. Don't fear. We have the map out, but we can't figure out. Like, it's crazy.
Okay.
Well, if you come to a conclusion, let us know, okay?
Ha ha.
Another
have a
question
question.
people are asking is what it was like to grow up after the war with parents who had obviously a different experience, had this experience.
Not as easy as it sounds. It obviously it changes people. The tension was always there. My mother was never the same. It just was. We lived very comfortably in Germany before the war with a car and a nice apartment and everything. I don't say that we didn't live fine in New York afterwards, but it was tension with it. It's a different, you think about it all the time. It does not leave you. Eva, you have.
Yeah. No, I would say, I mean, thinking about it, Papi did very well.
Yes.
I mean, it's admirable how he managed.
He
And
came,
I admire it to no end.
he-
I mean, we did New York. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, I told Ellie, I'm living here with, Mutti always liked pretty things and she had this idea, you know, she had this feeling for it. She has more of a feeling for it. You do too. I have less. And here I am in Florida with the things from Pesach that Mutti had put together for Pesach. And there are real crystal glasses and real plates that are beautiful and amazing.
Because that was
Just-
always a very
and,
important value to her and something that she really missed during the war.
yeah.
Right. Yeah, it meant a lot to her, obviously. Like,
It
I don't
meant a lot.
remember those cups. I remember those cups. They were, you know what they were? They were, what did she call, what was it? They were like brownish, that was what people, brown, right. And here, I've unpacked this, you know, there's a whole box here for Pesach. And I unpacked it now, and gorgeous glasses. I mean, real crystal, heavy, and I mean, really, just beautiful things
Yeah.
that were valuable to her. I have the pillowcases that the pillowcases she bought to pillow for sitting at the Seder. Everything, it just a very, very good taste.
Yes, that she did.
And what about Poppy? Poppy had to work at like various jobs, right? Like in every place you
Yeah.
live.
He worked in Chamonix. He worked for a farmer, and his
Right, that's why we had potatoes. Nobody else had potatoes. We had potatoes to eat.
we had potatoes and
Because he
and a
planted,
chicken.
I know how to plant potatoes because I went with him a few times to plant
I'm
potatoes.
sure that's coming really in handy in your apartment in Manhattan.
Upper West Side.
Yes.
But we also had a chicken that lived under the sink all week. And
Right,
with eggs,
exactly.
and
Oh, and the eggs, that you remember
the
the eggs,
the
Mutti?
eggs. My mother
Mutti
stayed.
in Chamonix, when we left, Mutti had, Mutti always planned in a way. We had a whole, it was like a glass container where she preserved boiled eggs. So in case we, we couldn't get food, we would have the eggs. And then when we left, we had to leave that. And I remember, I mean, I couldn't understand that we would leave these eggs.
But you put them in salt and water and you preserve them in.
Yeah, they're preserved a certain way.
Yeah. And believe me, my mother never did that before in Germany. And then
but she was very attentive to all that. I mean, she constantly planned.
That she always did. And then also the tomato, that was hilarious. She made tomato paste constantly because we had these tomato plants in the garden.
In the backyard.
The ceiling in our kitchen was always,
that I don't remember.
it was always full of red stuff because it would explode. The gas from the tomatoes.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions before we finish up? It's getting late. You have to unmute everyone. Oh, you can each unmute yourself or I'll unmute you all. Unmute all.
It depends how it's set up. Can you still see the candles?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, I mean, we want people to.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah. I think for this program, unlike.
Okay, so how about anyone who wants to talk, unmute yourself so we don't each hear everyone?
I'm curious, how many languages did you learn?
At the time, I spoke French and German. And right now, I don't speak. And in Switzerland, we learned then Swiss. However, at this point, I don't speak anything. My English is awful. My German is awful. In 1959, when we got married, we went to Switzerland. And this was really only 10 years after I had left Switzerland. And my husband said to me, why don't you speak Swiss to the people and they won't think we're foreigners? So I spoke Swiss to them and they spoke English to me. Did that work? I am not a person who speaks. I see things in pictures.
She's an artist. She works in images.
What language did you speak to your parents? Was it Yiddish?
German.
German.
No, Yiddish was only for the lower class.
Oh.
We don't speak Yiddish. That's why my grandson went to Columbia and his major was Yiddish.
Wasn't his major, but he learned.
He learned Yiddish at Columbia University at $60,000 a year.
Well, my parents only spoke Yiddish when they didn't want us to know what they were saying.
I'm sure, I am sure. But your parents' songs were, a lot of the songs were in Yiddish.
Yeah, well, my father used to lecture. When he first started lecturing, he used a lot of Yiddish. In the later years, he stopped because no one understood it already.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, anyone else?
You can write in the chat.
How old were Pearl and Eva when this went on?
We couldn't hear?
I missed the beginning. How old was Pearl and Eva during the initial running? And
I was born in 36. The war started in 38. So the beginning of it, I was like 2, 1.5. 2. And Eva was 6 years older than me. She still is.
When were you in America?
1948, 12.
Well,
Your bat mitzvah was in
My
Switzerland.
bat mitzvah was about a month before we left Switzerland. Next. Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining,
thanks for
everyone.
sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
It was nice seeing all you people. I wish I could get a cup of tea. Would you like a cup of tea, a cup of coffee?
I'll tell you, Avi is really a soldier. He hasn't moved an inch the whole time. Look at that discipline.
I'm listening.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Boma?
Sure.
How do you feel it affects your life nowadays? That whole story.
But in some ways, I am very, very, very grateful because I had a life and I could vary by 1/4 of an inch, I would not have had a life. And I'm grateful to my parents that they were smart and able to do all this and managed us. And then naturally, I have the best grandchildren. You have any other questions out there?
My question is,
About the grandchildren.
Great-grandchildren, he wants to know.
Yeah, I can't even talk about them. They're so great.
But do you feel like you've made different choices because of your past?
Well, I came to New York and I wouldn't date anyone who had an accent because I wanted an American husband who knew who he was and whose kids will never be called a refugee. I wanted them to know where they came from and that's it. Naturally, it didn't work quite that well for Rebecca and Marsha, but so much for planning, but that was really very, very, very much. And I still don't like people with accents.
How does it feel to be in Israel on Yom HaShoah?
I was this morning, I was still in bed when the alarm went off, the siren. And it really, it was tough. I jumped up, I stood up, and it meant something to me. Yom HaShoah. 2 or 3 years ago, I was on El Al going home on Yom HaShoah. And all I did was see the King David destroyed about 10 times, because that's the only movie that they show on El Al on Yom HaShoah, the siege of Yerushalayim.
And this year you were supposed to be on the plane on Yom HaShoah again.
Yeah, tonight you were supposed to leave.
But it didn't quite work out that way.
No, they are so lucky they have me for another half a year.
They're lucky. My mother never made it to Israel. She was supposed to be here for a month, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, you're fortunate that you're here right now.
I really am. Esther,
We're happy to have you, even if we don't see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really bad. You're good at hiking. You can try hiking home.
Well, you saw how we hiked when we went together. The other funny thing is when we went on the trip, I gave everybody a little bag with a couple of sugar cubes. And I said to them, for the next day, that's all we're going to eat. And in the very next town that we were was a Haagen-Dazs.
I was going to say Ben and Jerry's.
And I have pictures of everybody with
Just
a
like
double
in
sundae in front of
1939.
them. So it was not exactly the same trip that we took.
It was a good trip, though.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Great seeing you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I hope I didn't bore them.